a little more different than the rest, a little more way out, if you like. They not only sell more records, they have more records banned.
Ah, look, son, what are you gonna do with your life?
I gotta be a rock star, Dad! ARMI!
Okay, so g'day guys. Today we're speaking with Vince Contarino, vocalist for one of the most acclaimed Led Zeppelin cover bands in the world, the Zep Boys. How are you, Vince?
I love that. I'm very well, yeah, but I like the whole. Actually, the last time I checked, it was the known universe. Hey, we're from Adelaide. Let's be modest. We're huge in our lounge room.
Now, the Zep Boys,
thanks,
no problems. The Zep Boys are currently preparing to once again join forces with the Black Dog Orchestra. I love that name. For two Led Zeppelin Masters shows in Brisbane and Melbourne this July.
Yes.
Can you just tell us a little bit about what to expect from it?
Okay, well, people in Adelaide, some people in Adelaide will know because we've done a show called Led Zeppelin Flies Again with the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra, and I think we've done 3 seasons of that over the space of about 10 years or so, that's so obviously it's Led Zeppelin music and orchestrated. Now, Led Zeppelin Flies Again is very lush because we're using symphony orchestras. Led Zeppelin Masters is a little different. We're using a smaller orchestra, so it's about a 35, 36-piece orchestra plus the band, but the songs were arranged and charted with the song in mind, not with an orchestra or a band. So Nicholas Buck, the conductor and the arranger of the pieces, he's done this amazing job of using the orchestra to enhance certain phrases or themes of music, or to give it a little bit of extra punch, to make it a little bit more mystical or airy fairy in places. So the dynamics are unbelievable the way this guy's arranged them. For anyone that understands music, the way you piece together notes and phrases of music can radically change one composition, So we love this particular show because we're able to sort of rock it out a little bit more. When we're working with a full symphony orchestra, we've got to be really careful and respectful of the delicate instruments, whereas this show, we're allowed to just rock it out a little bit more. So it's a different take on the orchestration.
That's awesome.
Does that make sense?
It does. That's actually one of the things I'm quite interested in, because there's obviously a lot of Led Zeppelin songs that would lend themselves really well to an orchestra, obviously Stairway to Heaven, but it's the rockier ones like, Immigrant Song and Black Dog and stuff, they're the ones that I'd be really interested to hear. And hearing you say that you can sort of rock it out a bit more, what are those songs like now? Do they have a big punch to them?
Yeah, they're awesome. I mean, you got songs like Good Times, Bad Times, or like bam, bam. When you got a whole heap of instruments doing that, and these guys read so well, they're tight. It's incredible. And in pieces like Going to California or Over the Hills and Far Away, Nick has let us start those songs on it, and the Rain song, he lets us start them on our own as a band piece. And then he starts to bring in strings, like in Going to California, they come in, he starts to bring in the strings lightly, and before you know it, as it progresses, you've got the whole orchestra and band, working to this crescendo. So you've got this song that isn't a rock song, but it builds and builds and builds. And then we do things like Achilles' Last Stand. Now, that's epic. Right, so and that's big from the get go, but it keeps building and building and building, and we're able. See, with a band, you can only build so much, and you can still do an amazing job with the way volumes and also phrases that you play. But when you've got this many instruments, the way you bring them in, and then at the power you play certain phrases, like Kashmir and Achilles' Last Stand, they become really powerful. So it's when we listen to some of these songs on the albums, the overdubs do the trick for you. When Led Zeppelin play them live, or we've been playing them live, we have to deconstruct. So the beauty about playing in a rock band live is the power of the volume itself and how we control it. So that's one thing. But when you listen to it on record, you've got all these overdubs and stuff that give it texture and depth. With an orchestra, we can play all those parts and more. So the rock songs become really powerful. Songs like the Rain song just start so delicate, like a feather, and end up really powerful like a sledgehammer. So as a musician, sometimes what the hardest thing in this gig is? To actually concentrate on your job, because it's so easy to just go, oh, that's beautiful. It's a little bit like spectating and playing a game of football when you're watching one of your idols play and you go, oh, shit, I'm supposed to be tackling him. I just let him kick a goal. So, that's one of the things. You can't get carried away with the music. You've got to actually stick to the script, otherwise you forget, because it's so beautiful.
Absolutely. I can't wait to hear it, mate. So you played two shows earlier this year in Sydney, and obviously you've got 3 coming up, 2 in Melbourne and 1 in Brisbane coming up. If these are successful as well, would you consider putting on a full national tour with it?
Absolutely. I mean, everything's possible. There's certain... it gets a little bit political because there's contractual arrangements with people in Adelaide and symphony orchestras and stuff like that.
Yep.
So because this is a different promoter and production company that we're doing these. But hey, look, anything is possible. Anything is possible at all. So maybe in the future I could look at doing something like that for an Adelaide audience. But for right now, the only way for Adelaide audiences to catch this particular show, is by going to Hamer Hall, which is the closest one in Melbourne.
Yep.
And in many respects, a lot of people from Queensland, Sydney, Melbourne and Perth have been flying to Adelaide to see these other orchestral shows that we've done. Because we did 3 seasons here. We've done other shows before in Darwin and Melbourne, but more in Adelaide. So, and people are flown. So now maybe the only way to see these shows is if you actually go to Melbourne or Brisbane.
Absolutely, mate. The road trip.
Mate. Oh yeah, fly over the weekend.
Absolutely,
have a bit of fun. Yeah, I think it's worth it.
Oh, for sure.
Actually, I know people from Sydney are actually going to Brisbane. Like to do 2 sellout nights at the Sydney Opera House is for an act. Like the Zep Boys never really went to Sydney. Our biggest markets were always Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, and a little bit of Brisbane and the Gold Coast. But Sydney, we kind of avoided all the time. And that was my choice because, and once again, it was a political thing, which, is boring, and I won't bore your listeners and subscribers to that sort of stuff. But when the opportunity arose to do it the right way, I went in there, rolled up the sleeves and said, yes, let's do it. And bang, 2 sellout nights. So I'm glad I held out that long.
Oh, that's incredible. So getting back to the band, the Zep Boys, Adelaide audiences are going to have a chance to see you very soon. In fact, on the 27th and 28th of this month at the Gov, you'll be celebrating 30 years of playing Led Zeppelin. So, you've got to be pumped for those shows.
Oh, yeah. Oh, actually, absolutely. I'm doing some work up here on the Gold Coast at the moment, and my next priority is getting home and getting match fit so as I can pump out, 2.5 hours of Led Zeppelin. And, it's one thing working with an orchestra. Another thing, when you just work with the band, it's gloves are off and it's just pure instinct and we just go for it. So it's not like we have to worry about anybody. We just say, okay, let's attack these songs and eat them up. Let's do it. So that I love doing just the band thing too. So it's, no rules apply.
So 30 years, man, like you've been doing it for far longer than Led Zeppelin did it. How does it feel when you think about like you've been playing it for that long a time?
Yeah, I don't actually think about it too much. But, when guys like you ask me, I kind of go, yeah, wow, really, that is incredible. Where's the time gone? Because we've done other things in between, And I've changed a lot of members. Warwick's been there for virtually the 30 years, the bass player, Warwick Cheadle. He's, been 29, let's say 30 years. He's been there for a long, long time, and he's off and on, not the whole time, but for the majority of the time he's been there. And we've all done other things like theatre and other musical things, but 30 years down the track, we're still doing it. And seriously, we only intended this to be a couple of gigs back in '86. That's all it was, because it was a bunch of guys that were in other bands that decided to get together and say, let's see if we can do it. We thought, it's too hard to do, but we accepted the challenge and ended up doing it, and it was received so well. We thought, maybe we should do this again 6 months, 8 months, a year down the track. And we did that, and then, the demand was there for a little bit more. Then interstate, we started heading towards Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane in the early days, and that really went well. And then we headed to Perth, and before you knew it, we were just touring nationally. Every 2 or 3 months we'd be on a national tour and just working, and it was quite amazing actually. And the things that were going on with the economy, our biggest, the biggest audiences that we played to were probably during the Paul Keating recession we had to have, sort of thing, and venues were dying, bands were dying, and we were just bigger than ever. So it's just a weird thing. I don't know how that happened. And then we saw the change with pokies and the way that affected rooms, and it was a whole thing. Some bands didn't survive that because a lot of the rooms became either too big or too small.
Yeah.
What happens is when you have the rooms are too small, you can't put enough people in to put on a proper production because you're running at a loss. And, you bleed. You can't do that. There's no one supporting you. So, and that's been the problem with the music industry, and it's probably what's killed it off. The quality of show that, gig goers in the 70s and 80s, and even to a certain degree early 90s, they used to get a quality show. Now, musicians can't do that. They can't do that because they simply can't afford it, because you either play to a small 100-seater room, or then you end up having to feel like a festival theatre or the entertainment centre, and it's just ludicrous. You can't do that. So it's had a whole of. I'm going off the topic, but I'm working with 10 bands up here. I'm coaching 10 bands, and I look at these kids that have got so much talent. I think, where the hell are they going to play?
Yeah, exactly.
There's nowhere for them to play, and that's where you actually learn your craft, because you can only learn so. I can only guide them and teach them so much, but you learn your craft actually playing gigs.
Oh,
we learned our craft doing the gig. There's stuff that you learn at the gig that's just not in a book. But we survived all that, and I think the band has been able to. We've always been consistent. And, there's these thing called tribute bands and cover bands. How does it feel like being a cover band? I remember some guy saying, I was being interviewed on the ABC somewhere, and some guys, so it must be must be a buzz for a guy in a cover band to play with an orchestra. I just said, look, with all due respect, that's what an orchestra is. It's a cover band.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's all they do, mate.
They're the most acclaimed cover bands of all time, aren't they? The orchestra.
That's it. And they're because I don't look at ourselves as a cover band. We're a classic show. We're putting on a show. We've dedicated a lot of time and effort to, performing this music. And it's the music. We don't dress up like Led Zeppelin. We don't talk like them. We don't pretend to be them. We play the music like we hear it. And, that's a respect. And sometimes we do even a little changes of interpretations as well. So, and people don't care because they're getting the theme and the push of the music and its intent in an honesty, and it's the consistency. And I think that's what's guided us through the 30 years. And cameraman, I can tell you, man, it keeps you honest, because this is a form of music that if you drop your guard, if you're physically not able to perform it at the level it should be performed. Me as a singer, it's kept me off the drugs and alcohol and being physically fit to perform this stuff, because I'm 56 going 57, and to perform this stuff at the level it should be performed, you cannot be unhealthy. So it's forced me into a certain lifestyle. So Cameron, you've got to give up the cigarettes, man, because I hear you're going to be the next singer for the Zep Boys when I retire.
That's it. Yep, that's me.
That's you. But I think we can actually bring in the Robert Plant genes with you.
I got the ass for it.
Oh, that's all you need.
Shit. So just to finish up, it's been 35 years since John Bonham's death and the end of Led Zeppelin.
Wow.
And still their music is, if not more popular than it ever was right now. So what do you think it is about Led Zeppelin's music that makes it so enduring?
Oh, probably the same reason that people that have never heard Mozart, but they end up in an auditorium where where an orchestra's playing that music, they go, "Fuck, this is great." The music, the composition is magnificent. They have a depth. They can play a rock song that sounds simple, but all the layers and the chording and the voicing structures of that music has just a little bit of a slant to make them stand out, or make them a little bit different from the rock band next door, so to speak. And I think most kids start getting into Led Zeppelin at the same age, around that age of, 10, 11, 12. Boys do anyway, because they find it really cool and sexy, and it does something to them at a cellular level. And for other people, I've seen actually people in their 50s and 60s that I've introduced to Led Zeppelin never would ever heard it, because they hear songs like the Rain Song or All of My Love and Going to California and Kashmir, and they go, "Oh my God, these songs are beautiful." And they'll go, "We always thought Led Zeppelin was just heavy metal." Total misconception.
Absolutely.
It's the music. It's the composition. It's the music. And the way they performed it. Look, Led Zeppelin were I don't want to compare anything because you can't, but people like the Beatles or the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, they are a sum of people that react a certain way with music. There's a chemical thing about them. There's a dynamic about those people and their way of playing that is unique, and only they can do that thing. We can only reproduce the songs the way we hear them and be as honest, but the music and the compositions are still there. So that's why, and they will be forever implanted in music history. They're classic now.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, so, just like we listen to Baroque music from the, 14, 15, 1600s, they'll be listening to this. If the world doesn't blow itself up, they'll still be listening to this sort of stuff in 400 or 500 years' time, easy.
Oh, no doubt about it. They're definitely going to be the ones to last.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today, Vince. We can't wait to see you at the end of this month in Adelaide, and good luck with the Led Zeppelin Masters live show later on in July.
Thanks, mate. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Get off the fags.